planning your 2021 race season today on the Do Hard Things Today podcast. So the races are canceled. The swim's canceled. The bike's canceled. The run's canceled. So many. I think we had one Ironman that took place in the year 2020. So many of our races were canceled. So much uncertainty out there in the year 2020. Just a lot of moving pieces in this. So what we wanted to do today, we wanted to bring in Coach Katie Malone, and we're going to talk about how do you plan out your 2021 races, and some of the things we want to cover are, when you're looking out and you see, usually what happens with people is they will see something come across Facebook. The so-and-so marathon, the so-and-so half marathon is March the 30th. I'm just making that up. But you'll see that. You're like, hey, I'm going to do a half marathon this year, or I'm going to do a marathon this year. And you don't really take into account, okay, what does that really – how do I really want to plan my races moving forward? But with 2021, there's a lot of other factors at play, especially in the triathlon community of, as you've already seen, many Ironmans, and some of them are already sold out. And with all the deferrals, there's just a lot of moving pieces. So we wanted to bring in the expert on this subject, and that's Coach Katie Malone. So welcome back to the podcast, Coach.
Thank you.
Welcome. And we're going to finish this. We're going to introduce you to a series we're doing that's called So You Want to Be an Ironman. A lot of people that get into the endurance community, they rightly or wrongly kind of see the Ironman as that crowning achievement of, if that's your thing, of whether it's a half Ironman or a full Ironman. And so we're going to do a series. We're going to do 4 podcasts that cover kind of the 6 to 5 months away, what do you need to be doing? Then, 3 to 4 months away, what's going on in that training? Then, in that 1 to 2 month out, and then the real prep and kind of race day talk for that. And so we got Coach Katie Malone on, and we'll leave all her information. If you're interested in talking more to her about her services, I can personally tell you that she has really helped me to be able to get ready for, hopefully, if things go well with the vaccine and everything's going, my first full Ironman in May. So we're going to kind of use me as a guinea pig on these 6-month lead up podcasts. But she's done a great job of really kind of helping me to see what are my weaknesses, what are my strengths, and working on those to get ready. So we'll leave her information, and at the end she can tell you more about how to get in touch with her. If that's something that you're interested in and getting a little bit more help on your journey. So, Coach Katie, 2020, gosh, man, it was just we've talked about this before, just race after race, canceled. So the first thing is, with all of these races canceled, how does that affect the 2021 season? Demand, the pin-up emotions of people wanting to race, deferrals, all of these things. What are we looking at? As we're in December now, and man, these races are right around the corner. What do people need to be doing and need to be thinking about that's different from the old way of signing up for races?
This isn't that different, but I think that the first thing that you need to do, if you have a race you're planning to do in 2021, you need to make sure that it's open. You need to sign up for it now, actually yesterday. You need to get your hotel reservations taken care of. You need to do that immediately. And that's something a lot of people, like I'll see, somebody will tell me, I'm going to do this race. And, I think if somebody tells me they're doing a race, they already signed up for it. But I know a lot of people, like, they're going to do this race, but they haven't signed up for it yet. In 2021, you better be signed up for it if you want to get into it, especially these Ironman races. But honestly, even with the local races, I have a feeling 2021 is going to be the year that they are all full because nobody got to race last year. So don't wait to sign up for stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you I'm on a Facebook group. I'm going to be doing Ironman Tulsa in May, and it sold out. I think earlier this week is when it it's completely sold out. And people were on there, and they're like, "Holy cow! I saw that it." And some of the people that call people out a little bit more said, "Did you not see 2 weeks ago when they said there were 300 registrations left?" And I think sometimes we get lulled into, we believe that they're almost trying to manipulate us into, oh, they're just trying to get me to go ahead and sign up. I can tell you it's happening this year that these things are selling out.
Yeah, and I think even with Ironman, a lot of their safety protocols, they can only put so many people in the water, or they can only have certain areas closed off for so long, and depending on where we are with COVID, if they're having to put people in, do a time trial start, these races are going to be smaller, they're going to fill up faster. So I would say if you have something that you think you want to do, sign up for it now. Commit. It's time to commit right now.
Time to commit. So how do people evaluate where you are right now? I mean, we're December, and really nothing. I mean, not a whole lot's going to happen for most people unless you're on I think mine's rampant. Unless you're on a real tight time frame with a huge race coming up that you've got to be training bigger mileages for. Probably through the end of the year, there's not going to be a tremendous. Let's just be honest. You're probably not going to do a tremendous amount of training unless you're on a dedicated schedule and having that planned out for you. So how do people need to evaluate going into, because these things are really going to start hitting, most of them the end of February is when they first start, and then March, April, May, it's just this build. How do people evaluate, okay, where am I at right now and what's realistic for me to take on?
I think looking at your current fitness and where you are is super important, just so you can be honest with yourself. If you have a hard time running 3 miles and you ride your bike maybe 15 miles, but your swimming is just non-existent and you're really not a good swimmer, you probably shouldn't be signing up for a half Ironman that happens in May, for instance. But you might want to pick an end of the season half Ironman that you could work towards. But if you're going to do something like that, now's the time to say, I have got to get a coach. And honestly, at the end of December, a lot of the coaches who really work well with people, they're going to be full in January.
Yeah.
Because so many people have come out of 2020 and they're like, I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to make this happen. So it's you really need to start looking at that, or talking to a coach and getting on their schedule to start maybe in April or May kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's talk before we get into triathlon stuff at the end of this podcast. Let's talk running, and Hal's got our Facebook feed open, and we've got some questions, and he can just jump in with those questions anytime. But let's talk half and full marathoners. We've got a lot of runners that listen and in the group. Those two things are kind of races that people look at and they say, hey, I want to do a half marathon this year. I want to do a full marathon. Generally speaking, let's take a person that is the first person. They're coming off the couch and they want to do a half marathon. Okay. And let's just say they're in generally okay shape, but they're coming off the couch running. What kind of time frame do they really need to commit to be able to finish their first half marathon and do it, not go out and set a world record, but to go out and be able to finish it, not injure themselves during training?
Well, that not injuring yourself during training is a whole another story. We never know how people are going to handle the training. But in general, I would say probably a good 4 months. Okay. And somebody like that coming off the sofa, going into a half marathon training program, they're going to be doing a walk run program. Yep. That's going to be the safest. That's going to allow them to most likely finish and not get injured.
Yep.
They're not going to necessarily be doing a lot of speed work or track work or hill repeats. Yep. They're just going to be kind of stoking their engine and getting themselves out the door.
So if you're listening to this and you're trying to determine on that half marathon and you're on the couch right now, you're looking at about 4 months. So the soonest you should be signing up for a half marathon should be April, correct?
Right.
Okay. Now let's talk about the person that is, generally when people jump into marathons, I've run a few half marathons. I'm thinking about scratching that itch of doing the full marathon.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people that can run a half marathon now, what kind of a time frame do they need to build from bridging that half to full gap?
In terms of months?
Months. And just generally speaking, what's the big difference that they're going to see between half marathon training for a half marathon and training for a full marathon?
The big difference is going to be the long run on the weekend. Mm-hmm. So if you are making the move from half marathon to marathon, typically you should be at the place where you're already doing some speed work at the track. You already do hill repeats. You already do tempo runs. You know what they are. So you're a little bit more experienced, hopefully, so that your weekday runs, can be anywhere from 5 to 8 miles during the week. And then on the weekend, instead of, running 10 to 15 miles to get ready for a half marathon, you're going to start pushing that 2 miles a week more every week until you get up to 20 miles. Ideally, if you really want to be competitive, I recommend doing at least a couple of 20 milers before your marathon. But it really depends on how much time, because you don't want to do the last 3 weeks before your marathon, you don't want to run 20 miles every week. Ideally, maybe 6 weeks before your marathon, you'd do your first 20 miler, and then you'd have a week where you did maybe 10 or 12, let yourself recover. The next week, maybe do 18 to 20 again, have another recovery, so that you kind of have some recovery built in there. But that pushes that whole time frame back to maybe more like 5 months.
Yeah.
And so it really depends kind of on like what type of performance you're looking for at that point with a marathon. And for beginners too, like if you're not super comfortable with your running, you can do the walk run method for a marathon. Yeah. It just really depends on like where the person is.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to follow up on that. So the real difference, because I think people get scared sometimes about jumping to the 26 miles, and it is deeper waters. You go in, you get over that 13 miles, just the likelihood of bad things going wrong. It just.
Well, nutrition becomes a big issue too.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, as I've had to learn the hard way on some of my longer things, but when people do that, so the big difference you're saying is just going to be really in that long run on the day. You're going to be doing a lot of the similar things during the week. It's just that longer mileage during the weekend, which does a couple of things. Again, your nutrition, your sleep, all those things become important. But it's also just that time, that time that you've got to set aside on that Saturday to be able to do that. And I would just want to put a cautionary warning for people out there that, when you think about that time on these long training days, if you go out there, say for that 20 miler, for I don't know, if you run a 10-minute mile, well, then you're going to be 3 hours and something out there running. It's not just that 3 hours, though. When you go out and you run 20 miles, it changes your day. For most people, it changes your day. So, just keep that in mind as you're planning these things. A lot of people say, well, I'm going to have that long run. I'm going to do it early in the morning. Then,
for me, it might change a couple of days.
Yeah, it's change a couple of days. It really does. So just take these things into consideration whenever you talk about biting these off, because if you don't get the training in, then you're going to end up injuring yourself whenever you do, because you're going to go in and try. I've had to do that. Howard, we got any questions? Just jump in at any time with it. We got
I've got some on the next one on the triathlon. Yep.
Yeah. So and some of we got a lot of questions. So for those of you that we don't answer these, we're going to do a different podcast on some of these. As far as everybody always wants to say, how do I get faster? I want to be a faster runner. How do I get faster?
Go to the track.
Yeah.
That was one of the questions on how to get faster.
Yeah, how do you get faster to a lot of that stuff, some of it is just not real relative to the podcast of how do you plan your season and how do you really think about what it is you're going to do. So we're going to cover some of those in a separate podcast. So don't get your feelings hurt if Hal didn't call out your specific question. We see them.
Yeah, while we're still on marathons, I've got one. So Kathleen asked, in between marathons, I'd like to keep a good base mileage so I'm not starting from scratch each time. So I guess she's wanting to do more, multiple marathons. what does that number look like for long runs? I guess your base mileage between marathons.
I mean, that's a good question, but it really depends on how many weeks or months you have between the marathons. Because like if somebody had 3 weeks between 2 marathons, which really to recover from a standalone marathon is just the minimum. There you're probably going to do maybe a 12-mile run in between them. You wouldn't really do a super long run. But if you had, 6 to 8 weeks, you might have a couple weeks where you started to build back, where you did, 8 miles, 10 miles, then maybe a 15, and then maybe even a 20-miler. It just depends on your fitness level. But where you could indeed throw that in there and do some longer quality runs. Or you could do a 2-a-day. You could do a medium run in the morning and then a longer run in the afternoon to get that long run in, but give yourself a little bit more recovery in between 2 races. There are other options, and you have to be creative. Or one that nobody likes, but it is a really good thing to do is deep water running, because it's no impact. Yeah, Kevin's giving that thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
But it is no impact, and it provides a very good aerobic workout.
Usually whatever you say works, but that doesn't mean you have to like it, right?
No, you need good music and maybe a friend.
Hey, I got one of those things. I got an underwater iPod thing.
Yes.
That's helping my swims. I listen to podcasts while I'm swimming.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe some good music.
Maybe you need to focus on doing your technique work.
No. I am a good swimmer.
Yes, you are.
Yes. See? How? I'm a good swimmer.
Good swimmer.
I don't say I'm a terrible swimmer
anymore. You love
to
swim.
I love to swim, and I am a good swimmer.
Yes.
Hey, who was that guy on Saturday Night Live that did that?
Oh, Dave.
Gosh, darn it. People like
me.
Yeah. What was his name? I can't remember. You have to look it up if you're listening. I'll send you the link to it. Yeah, it's old school Saturday Night Live. But positive affirmations. I am a good swimmer. All right, let's jump into triathlon. We got a ton of runners, cyclists, others and some of you have been talking about dipping your toes into this for a while, and I think this is the year. It seems like there's some momentum in the area, and I don't know if it's because of the pent-up demand or what it is, but there's some momentum in the area of people that are jumping into the triathlons and jumping in like deep waters of half Ironmans.
Yeah, the Hub C runners, endurance junkies who these questions, a lot of them came from. 14 people signed up for Wilmington 70.3.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to work together. I've been talking to Jill about that. We don't have a plan yet, but we're going to do something.
Of course, that's what, late October?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people jumping into this. How do you? Let's start with the beginners. How do they? And give us the Cliff Notes version of this. What do they need to do to start the journey of? I want to do a sprint triathlon in. What's the first one?
April.
Lake Murray, yeah. April 18th.
April 18th. Okay, so April 18th is coming. For
open water and probably going to be wetsuit legal, so it's a great first one to do.
And I think for anybody that's considering doing a half Ironman at any point in this year needs to do this race. So for these people that are, and there's some of them listening. I know I'm not gonna call you out on air, but there's some of you listening, and you're talking about this, and you hadn't gone to the pool. You haven't been. You're kind of in a slack period right now. So you got 4 months. What do they need to be doing right now? And to lead up to just being prepared to do a sprint triathlon.
Yep. You need to get in the pool. That's the biggest thing. And I mean, I think Jill and I haven't laid it all out yet, but hopefully we'll be doing some swim clinics just to help this big group of beginners that we have. So get in the pool and don't overthink it. Just go and get in. I think so many of us worry about, I don't have the right stuff. I don't have the right technique. I don't have the right goggles. Who cares? Get your goggles at Walmart. Go get in the pool. You've got to start finding that comfort level. And getting to the pool is the hardest part. Once you're there, you can get it done. It's just you've just got to get there. Find a friend. Go with your friend. Right now there are not a lot of swim groups for adults at the Middle Tiger Y, if that's where you're going to be swimming. But maybe they'll change that in the new year. I don't know what they've got going on, but definitely look into programs they have. If you really feel like you can't do it on your own, look into people who do some swim coaching. I mean, there are some swim coaches in Greenville. I know Spartanburg's kind of light on the swim coaches, but I think there's a woman at the downtown Y who gives lessons to adults as well. And like I said, we'll probably do a swim clinic or two just to help people get moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, when you worked with me that one time, it really helped me. I mean, and I think if you're trying to do this, it is worth paying a professional to look at you and watch you swim. I remember when I swam, I mean, literally it's no lie. And you can confirm this. When I got to the end of the pool and she was watching me, she's like, I know what it is. And I was like, what is it? She's like, I'm not telling you, but just keep swimming. And
I was videoing him. I didn't want to tell him.
She's like, but I know what it is. And it was something really simple, but heck, man, I didn't know. So I think investing in getting somebody to help you with swimming is a huge thing, but getting in the pool is definitely.
Yeah, I had somebody help me get started.
Yeah. Yep.
That's okay. The swim is hard. I mean, like, it's just because you can't breathe when you need to breathe. And so that's why getting help and having somebody kind of watch you is a big deal, and it is important. But just like the swim, you've got to get on that bike. Now, biking in the cold weather is not super comfortable unless you have the right clothing. So I'm just throwing that out there for anybody who thinks they're going to be super motivated on the 1st of January. Like, it might not be that fun to get on your bike unless it's a warm day. But investing in a trainer, right now, most people are moving to smart trainers, which means there are lots of people who have old trainers sitting around that they will either give you just to get out of their garage, or you can buy really cheap, and you can start learning to clip in and clip out on the trainer. You can start learning to shift on the trainer and just kind of get used to your bike. But really, ideally, the best way to do cycling training in the winter is on a trainer on your bike, not on, like, you can use the Peloton. It's okay, but it's not ideal. It's really better to be on your bike. And then running, I'd like to think for most people that's probably going to be the easiest, because triathlon rules are run, walk, or crawl. Yeah. So I think everybody can handle that.
And again, if you get some help, and if you're following a plan, I can tell you that it'll make a huge difference. Even on the trainer, my cycling improved more on the trainer than it did ever. I mean, I know you need to ride outside, but you don't let the cold weather be something that knocks you out. Right. You got more questions about that, Hal?
That answered the ones that we had on the getting started.
Good. Yeah.
They were how to get started in swimming, how to get started in biking.
Yep.
Excellent.
So what? Go ahead.
I'll add another one, though. Do we need a coach to do a 70.3?
You do not need a coach, but it will shorten the learning curve.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because there are a lot of programs out there, like on Training Peaks, that are free. But most programs that are pre-written, they add a lot of extra fluff in there because they anticipate you not doing, I think it was 30% of the program. So there's a lot of extra. So if you're like really type A and you feel like you have to do every single bit of it, it might be a bit overwhelming. And a lot of those programs too, they might say beginner, but I've looked at some of them and I thought, wow, that wouldn't really have you completely prepared, or I would not give somebody that and think that that was enough going into a 70.3. But I mean, there are a lot of coaches in this area now, like especially in Greenville. Not all coaches are made the same, but you call up, you ask questions, you look at what, talk to people they've coached, ask for recommendations. I think that that's kind of one of the biggest things when you're looking for a coach is ask questions and ask to talk to people they coach. Because people will tell you very quickly, like what they really like or what they really hate.
Right.
And I think the answer to that question, I think you have to ask, what are your goals? What do you mean do a 70.3? Yeah. I think you could do an Ironman without a coach by following an online scripted vanilla cookie cutter approach. I think you could find yourself at the finish of an Ironman if you just did everything that it said. But I don't think you're going to be near as strong as you could be if you used a coach. And I think the biggest thing about a coach, if you find the right one, is they kind of figure you out.
Yeah.
And they figure out what you need at the right time, what you don't need at the right time, what you're good at, because we're always, if you training for a 70.3, I can guarantee you what you're always going to default back to on your training that you're not going to miss, and it's going to be cycling.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
you're such a strong cyclist.
Yeah.
Okay, you're but if you got a coach, that coach is forcing you to follow a plan, and they're pushing you. So I think depends on your definition of what doing a 70.3 is, and doing an Ironman. Are you just wanting to complete it and just get the medal on that, or are you wanting to maximize your ability to be able to do it? I can tell you this, the biggest thing that I've seen with a coach is there's a lot of times that I'll have weeks where I don't have as much as I want to do. I think I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I get stuff and I was like, this
Too easy.
it's too easy. It doesn't make sense to me. But so it's like, okay, well, just trust the process, and just do that. So I think I can't tell you.
You can do either.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you how valuable having a coach is.
Oh, yeah. For me, I needed one for swim because
Yeah.
I was starting from zip.
Yeah.
And
so I would encourage you to think, and I think, maybe we can if a lot of people want to do these triathlon, maybe we can get some defined times for some of these things where we have a swim group that meets at a defined time for people that want to get involved. I know that that helps. And
bike too, we had a
yeah.
little unofficial
Yep.
group,
all those things.
non-group,
Right.
group, non-group.
So anyway, hey, we got some of that technology we can use. That new camera I've got goes underwater too.
That's right.
So we can do all kind of stuff that really we don't need to be doing, but we can do it anyway. So now let's introduce the series. So you want to be an Ironman. Now this is going to be a 4-part series. Okay, so we've talked about planning your 2021, but we're going to introduce this series. And I think it's going to be valuable for anybody who's taking on an Ironman or taking on a 70.3, which is a half Ironman. And what we're going to we're breaking it down into 4 segments. Month 6, when you're 6 months out, and then 5 months out. So from 6 months out to being 4 months out, and then from 4 months out down to being 2 months out, from 2 months out down to about 3 weeks out, which is when you start your taper, and then from your taper to race day. And what this is what do you need to be prepared for? I think you called it the pre-training period too, something like that.
Training to train.
Yeah. So if you're doing an Ironman, and again, I'll be a guinea pig on this. Hal will be a guinea pig on this. He's taking on a 70.3 this year. But I'm 5.5 months out from the first Ironman on my schedule.
You're training to train.
Yep. So let's define what's going on right now. You want to be an Ironman. You're from month 6 down to month 4.
So in month 6, really, like 6 months out from your race, what you really need to be doing is looking at your gear, looking at the race. Like, are you doing a race that's going to be in the mountains, or are you doing a flat race? What's the gearing look like on your bike? If you're getting ready to do an Ironman that's in the mountains, you might want to check that gearing, or talk to the coach you have and ask them if the gearing you have is appropriate. Also be looking at like where you're going to do your training. And what I found is a lot of people don't necessarily know the routes, the local routes, and like where to go to train. And that's a problem, because like when it comes time for Ironman, you better just like be able to get on your bike. Okay, I got my 80-mile route. Okay, I got my 50-mile loop. Okay, I've got my hill that's going to take me 20 minutes to climb. Like I know where I'm going and be able to go there. So 6 months out, you need to kind of start looking at that. Like, do you know where you're going? Do you have a good feel for that? Do you have the appropriate gear? Are your bike shoes in good shape? Do you need new bike shoes? Do you need new cleats? And the answer to the need new cleats is everybody needs new cleats every year. Put new cleats on your shoes. So if you're listening to this right now, once you finish, go get new cleats, put them on your shoe.
Hey, and let me call timeout right there. You know what else you need besides new cleats?
What?
You need a backup pair of cleats.
Oh, yes. Well, when you're ordering your new cleats, order 2 pairs so you have a backup pair that can stick in your race bag.
Yes.
And you carry with you all the time.
I learned that the hard way, and I shop with our local bike shop. But when I went to get mine, I mean, they ordered them for me, but I was like 8 days without the proper cleats. And so
you always order 2 pairs. I mean, I, of course, have like 20 pairs of old cleats that I just hold on to because, you know, that way if I happen to break the right one and I still have one that was good, I could change it out. But just for spare parts, like I save a lot of stuff like that. Sorry, where were we?
You were talking about the gear.
Oh, gear, yes. So change your cleats. That was the main thing. Look at your running shoes. Make sure you've got a couple of pairs of running shoes. I always recommend having at least 2 or 3 pairs that you can switch out so you're not running in the same pair of shoes every day. This is an injury prevention like 101. It's not me selling shoes, even though I am sitting in the shoe store right now looking at lots of awesome shoes.
Hub City Runner Studios.
Yeah. Just have to throw that in there. But I mean, I definitely always am wearing 3 different pairs of shoes. I alternate. You know, you have kind of like your speed work shoes, the shoes that you'll end up probably racing in. You might get a new pair month before the race. Then you have like trainers that you're going to do your longer runs in out on the roads. And then maybe a pair of trail shoes or off-road shoes so that you can run on soft surfaces like gravel roads.
Yeah. So let's talk bike. What other things? This is
bike fit. Sorry, you need to get a bike fit. 6 months out. That's when if you haven't had a bike fit professionally, and I mean by somebody who specializes in doing bike fitting, not necessarily the bike shop. I love our bike shops, but I really believe in professional bike fitting.
Yeah. Now, where do you find that at?
There are 2 people in Greenville who do professional bike fitting. Personally, I use Jim Cunningham. I have him do the fits for all my athletes. He's been doing it for, 20-something years. And, we just kind of have that relationship where he'll send me pictures. He'll send me all their stats. And, it'll be like, this is where we are. And that way, if the athlete isn't comfortable, they can go back to him and he can move things just a tiny little bit. To adjust and put people in a really good, comfortable position, especially for endurance.
Yeah.
The position for, a high level athlete doing an Olympic distance race and an athlete doing an Ironman race, they are 2 very different positions.
So all the gear, all that stuff. So you've got all of your gear.
Fitting.
Yeah, the bike fitting, your shoes, let's talk what are the different kind of things as far as for people are going to start swimming, are they going to be swimming a whole lot more? What's the best thing for them to be swimming in? We got the tri suits that you're going to be probably doing. You're going to be obviously doing your Ironmans in for your training swims and those kind of things. How do you determine? I mean, there's a million things out there. Most people are going to be looking online. There's not that many places you can go in and buy. How do you determine what it is you're going to be wearing for that?
For your swim training, normally I would just wear a comfortable bathing suit. Because the chlorine does tend to eat bathing suits. And ladies, I'm telling you this, just as a heads up, there will be a day you go to the pool and all of a sudden your bathing suit is just see-through.
See-through, yeah.
Do your swim and then put it in the trash can so you don't wear it again. We've all been there where you go to take it off and you're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing to it. Or you put it on when you get to the pool at 6 o'clock in the morning and realize that there's not a lot left to your bathing suit. So I usually throw a couple bathing suits in my bag just in case. Nylon bathing suits or bathing suits that have a nylon weave do tend to last a little bit longer. But if you just buy like some cheaper bathing suits at Swim Outlet, bathingsuit.com has great deals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the bathing suits are like $30 a piece. And honestly, it's the cheapest thing you'll buy in triathlon.
Yeah.
That and the goggles.
Yeah, I'll use my old triathlon
Kits.
that where the chamois may have lost its luster, but I'll use those too. And then they just eventually
They
get that point.
disintegrate.
I mean, you kind of get to seeing them when they start like really, really black, and then every time they get a little bit grayer, and then they become like a white. Then you know it's like, okay,
Just put it in the trash can.
better put it in the trash before something bad happens. So you've got all your gear, everything like that. So mentally, when you're at this point, and this will drop sometime later December, but like for me, I'm 5.5 months out from my Ironman. Where does that person need to really be from a base standpoint to be able to jump into, which we're probably a month away from the big training starting. But where does somebody need to be right now in this period?
So a couple things with when you're still 6 months out. So from a fitness standpoint, you should be comfortably able to work out 5 to 6 days a week, at least for an hour, which you're fine. You're good. But the other thing is when you're 6 months out from your Ironman, you need to start looking realistically at your life and your schedule.
Yeah.
What things are you going to have a hard time completing because your training is going to be increasing, especially on the weekends? And I know this sounds kind of silly, but it ends up being a really big deal because it can be a big stressor at home. I have men and women who do Ironman, and sometimes the man is the cook at home. Yeah. And all of a sudden when he's doing Ironman training, like he just can't manage to get dinner cooked anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's like, what's your plan for that? Is your wife going to pick up all the slack, or are you going to order in a food service? And so like my word, I think for 2021 is what can I reasonably outsource? And I think that triathletes, especially people training for Ironman, need to seriously consider that going into it and also budget for it. Like honestly, having a meal service, I've been using one. I've been using Hub City Pharmacy for the last probably 4 months. They deliver all our meals for the week on Tuesday. They put them in my fridge, and I don't cook. I have outsourced my cooking because I don't really enjoy cooking and I don't have time. Yeah. So that's one thing like that you can take off your plate. No pun intended. Mm-hmm. But then also like, are you expected, does your wife expect you to do like 2 or 3 hours of yard work on the weekend? I don't know, but a lot of people do expect that. And so all of a sudden, if you're not doing your part or carrying your share at home, that creates a lot of resentment. And I mean, this happens for men, this happens for women. And, for women, sometimes I'm like, look, hire a cleaning lady, put that in your budget, have somebody come in and clean while you're training, because it will take that stress away and it will get rid of that resentment that you can face with your spouse. And, people think it's silly at first, but you do a couple Ironmans and then all of a sudden you realize, wow, my wife is over this. And the idea is for Ironman and training to enhance your life, not to put like major stressors on your life.
Yeah, well, I think you got to look at it too as you're committing to, because, okay, 2 months from now, I'll be 3.5 months out from probably in the middle of what kind of hours am I going to be spending per week? And the total hours and then the big one on the weekend.
Well, I mean, total hours, I try to be pretty reasonable with people who work full time in terms of training. I mean, your training could be anywhere from 12 hours to 20 hours a week. Yeah. Probably I'm not going to have you have a lot of 20-hour weeks, but that's the range you're looking at. That's like a part-time job. Mm-hmm.
So if you take the middle of that, which is 16.
Yep.
So you've got 16 hours now, and so what kind of you're doing 100-milers.
That's 6 hours at least.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you've either got a 6-hour or you've got a 4-hour run, something like that.
No, not either or.
Yeah,
you're gonna have both.
So you've got You got one on Saturday, one on Sunday.
Yep.
Okay, so
There's 10 hours.
yeah, so you're looking at that. That's 10 hours on the weekend. So I think you got to count the cost, and you got to look and say, I believe if you're going to be training for an Ironman, you have no other hobbies at this point when you're in training. I don't think you can't because
Or yard work.
well, what I mean is no. I mean, I think going back to your point, the things that are I think your duties at home that you've got to do to keep so it doesn't pull away from your family where they're getting upset and you end up getting to the finish line of an Ironman and everybody's like, I'm just glad it's over so I can just
Right.
so this thing. You don't want that. What I mean by hobbies is I think this becomes your okay. Hey, if you're a golfer, you're not going to be golfing on the weekends. You're going to be riding your bike on the weekends.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be running on the weekends. You're going to be.
You're committed.
Yeah, you're committed. You're going to have to, as soon as there is light, you're going to be on that bike and out getting the miles in, so you can be back home, mid-afternoon to be able to spend time with your family.
But in the winter months, like when you're going to be training for yours, you're still going to have cold weather.
Mm-hmm.
So you might not be outside first thing in the morning. And that's what makes it even more difficult is, you might not want to, like if it's 30 degrees, you're probably not going to be jumping on your bike out to get outside. You might have to do some of it on the trainer to start with and then get outside and just ride from home. I think, in that 6 months out, that's where you're looking at your real life schedule. Like, can you ride from your house? Or does every ride you do you need to drive somewhere to ride? And I mean, this morning I drove somewhere to run because it would be fun, but I added an extra hour onto the day doing that.
Yeah. And you got to have your training plan in one hand and the weather forecast
Yes.
in the other.
And you have to make it work.
Right.
However, whatever you need to do to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, 6 months out when we're talking about gear, the other thing that comes into play is having good running gear, having good cycling gear, like that you can get out in the cold in. Personally, I mean, Smart Wool is my go-to. Different thicknesses of Smart Wool bottom layers, like a long sleeve shirt. It's 150 is the Murano wool that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, it's light enough to give you a good base layer, but it really keeps you dry.
I'm going to throw another plug in. Swiftwick wool socks
Yes.
are the bomb.
Yes.
I don't have to wear shoe covers.
No, the Swiftwick wool socks,
Merino
which they
wool.
sell here at Hub City,
Special order.
special order. But they really, it makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
So having the gear, also having booties to go over your cycling shoes. I like to stick hot hands in between my booty covers and my shoes. So I'm not trying to stick it in my shoes, but I just put them on top of my toes. Because if your feet are warm, your body's warm when you're riding the bike.
Yeah. So I think the point there is this is not, hey, I'm getting ready for a half marathon. This is serious mileage, serious time, a serious investment of dollars, all those things. And I think now is the time you got to be counting those costs.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, Santa Claus.
That's right.
You should have a serious Christmas list. I mean, I guess most of the time I assume that when people get to this point, they've already been in the sport for a while. So you've collected some of the good gear and some of and you don't need 10 cycling jackets. You need one good cycling jacket. You don't need lots of different running gear. You just need that good, the layers, like a Smart Wool shirt and then maybe a light windbreaker kind of shell. Those two things and a hat and a good pair of gloves, you can run in pretty much anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So all that stuff is in check. So you've got those things. Where do they need to be as far as their, you say they should be able to do 5 or 6 hours they should be doing comfortably. Do they need to be really, when you go look at training plans and you start looking online, train for an Ironman, whatever, you get a lot of differing opinions of how long the training. What do you feel like, from that 6 to 4, from 6 months out to down to 4 months out, people need to be doing physically training wise? It's just generally. I'm not asking for a training plan. I'm just asking.
So in general, like, that's the point at which you need to be working on spending time on the bike, like just having your butt on the bike outside. The trainer is a great training tool, but you can't, if you're getting ready to do an Ironman or half Ironman, you can't spend all your time on your bike on your trainer. And I think running is the same. Like, a treadmill is a great tool occasionally, you know, if you don't want to go run in the dark during the week. It's a great tool to use. But on the weekends, you really need to get outside and run on the pavement or run on a dirt road, run trails, whatever you want to run, like, to make it fun for yourself. But you need to work on that aerobic base. And none of it really needs to be super hard at that point. It's just time. You need to put the time in.
Yeah. So what are some common mistakes? We'll call them newbies, but these will be people that have done some sprints, done some, maybe completed that half Ironman, struggled through it. It was brutal. Everything else, you know, they just, you know the kind. Let's call those newbies, even though they've done some of these other things. What are some common mistakes they make whenever they jump into the I'm going to do an Ironman that you see in their training?
Not doing the distance on the bike. I see that a lot. Most of the time, people do tend to try to do the running, you know, get the running distance in, and not paying attention to their nutrition during the workouts, not having a plan for nutrition, like a solid plan where you're getting in calories. People who tend to cramp, not knowing how much sodium they need. I mean, that can be a real problem. So I think that's probably like the biggest issue I see with people is they have no clue when it comes to nutrition, what they need in terms of calories or hydration, you know, dehydration. Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah. And how do you figure that out? I think I've experienced that in in some training a month or so ago with some, I ran into, well, I remember I think it was a 20 miler, and I mean, I was just killing it.
Right.
16, and then
you weren't.
And then it just like jumped up and grabbed you,
which is a lot of times too late. Once, and that's how you learn, though. Mm-hmm. You know, we learn best from our mistakes. You don't learn as much on a day when everything went great. Yeah. You're not like, oh, let me write this down. I feel so good. Let me go home and write down what I ate. But on the day when you had that day where you just bonked all of a sudden and things were going great, like, that day you learned. Oh, yeah. And you really took note of what you ate or didn't eat, and also what you were drinking going into it. And, like, you know, a lot of people say, well, I drank a lot before my workout. Well, that doesn't really matter because you're sweating during your workout. You're losing it while you're working out. So you have to be drinking. Some people say, oh, I don't like to eat and drink while I'm doing a run. It doesn't matter. You've got to teach your gut to accept nutrition and calories. And it's not a lot of calories, but you have to take calories in.
Yeah. I've got my Garmin set.
That's perfect.
Every 20 minutes to 30 minutes, it pops up drink. And then every hour I've got it set to eat.
Perfect.
So,
yeah, because you can't catch up. And
no.
I think people have to take that next step into sports
nutrition, not like, I mean, you can get away once in a while if you go to your cupboard and you realize, oh, I have no sports nutrition. I need to take something else with me today. We all have those days. But in general, sports nutrition is going to work better. You won't have to carry nearly as much of it with you because it's concentrated. Yeah. And, you know, it's just easy to eat and digest.
Yeah, and it's not – you can't get away with stopping by the store and getting a Gatorade or a Powerade at the store because we've said on here before, it's pretty much like drinking Kool-Aid.
But a Coke will save your day if you're bonking. Yeah. A Coke at a gas station, if you're having a bad day and you didn't get your nutrition right, stop, have a Coke, and you're probably going to be okay because the combination of the sugar and the caffeine will kind of give you a second life.
Coke and a smile. Know what they say?
Yes.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about some misconceptions about training for an Ironman. The first one I want to ask you about, I think one of the misconceptions is that an Ironman is well, when you say I'm training for an Ironman or you complete an Ironman, oh, you're this superhuman person, blah, blah. I think the misconception is that these are like super special people that do this. Well, they're super special people, but I think anybody who does not have a physical limitation that prevents them from being able to train, I think anybody, if they commit to the daily training and just win in the day every day, I think every single person can put themselves in a position at the beginning of that race to where they've done everything they can and they can cross the finish line of an Ironman. What do you think?
Absolutely.
So why that misconception then?
Because it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard to do something day in and day out. It's hard to, when you've done a 100-mile ride, maybe your first 100-mile ride, and then get back out there and run walk, 15 miles the next day. That's hard. Mm-hmm. And life gets in the way. It's a huge time commitment. And I think people really underestimate that time commitment. I try to add on like an hour after my workout when I'm planning time-wise, because when I walk in the door after a 100-mile ride, I'm going to refuel. Like, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to have my protein shake. I'm going to eat. And, early in the season, I'm usually going to lay down on the floor because I'm just beat after I do my long ride. And, on days if I've scheduled myself things too tightly and I come in and I don't feel very good, I got to get that nutrition in. I got to get in the shower because I got to go. That's really hard. And if you're not used to doing that, it's just the beginning of a disaster. Yeah. And you have a couple days like that, a couple training days, and it's kind of demoralizing. And I mean, I've done it for a long time, so I get it. But I know for people who are new to it that it's 10 times harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else before we cross over to the half Ironman? Anything else full Ironman wise in that 6 to 4 month period people need to be aware of?
I just think preparing your family for what's coming, because what I hear a lot of is, oh, well, my husband expected me to go do this, or, my kids wanted me to do this or that. And it's like, that's where you really have to ask for help and ask for grace, in planning. Because you might need your husband or wife to step up and take the kids somewhere and do something on their own. And, I jokingly tell people, like, if you're going to buy yourself a new bike for your Ironman, that you should probably buy your spouse, like, a nice piece of jewelry or, something nice to say, hey, I realize the sacrifices you're getting ready to make. And one thing that I always mention in my training program, I kind of have every week I have on the countdown things that you should expect that week. And one of them is sacrifices. Training for an Ironman, you have to make sacrifices. Your family has to make sacrifices. And it sounds kind of funny to say that, but it's true. I mean, you are going to sacrifice some time. Sure, you're investing the time in yourself, but you're also going to sacrifice time with your kids. Mm-hmm. You are going to miss some things. And we live in a culture of, we have that fear of missing out. And you're going to be rewarded in a different way later for all the training you put in. But in the moment, you're going to miss some things when you're out on your bike. And that's really hard to handle.
Well, and I think that makes it even more important. I've talked to several guys, a little group I'm in, and I always ask about balance. How do we balance these things? They're in business and they're doing they're in have multiple kids. I mean, there's a lot of things drawing at them. And I've always I believe that you've got to be fully present. What I mean by fully, your life's never going to be in complete balance, but you got to be fully present wherever you are. And what makes this hard is, like I said, you go out and you ride your bike for 6 hours, and then on Sunday you follow that up and you run 4 hours. And you take, for instance, on something like that, okay, well, do you make the decision to do that early in the morning and then go to church and then go, or do you make the decision I'm gonna wait till after church or whatever and do it in the afternoon, and then you're going to miss that. But you got to figure out, I think you've got to figure out, okay, what's the best time to be able to fully invest in them and then to be fully present there when I am there, knowing I'm not going to be there as much, but how am I fully there whenever I am there? And that's something, you know, we got a podcast that'll be coming up, you know, probably next week to close out 2020. You know, it talks about the things we've learned here, and one of those for me is to enjoy that moment that you're in. And so I think you gotta understand that you're taking on something like this, and you're really going to go try to not just finish it, but to do make a good race out of it. You gotta be willing to, I think, sacrifice those times of yourself after you do those long runs and you don't want to invest in them. You gotta be able to push on through right then too.
But that's where you've got to do what you're supposed to do every week, so that then when the one weekend does come where like your kid really has something that's important and you're just going to miss training that weekend, that you just miss the training and it won't really set you back. If you do that every weekend, you're not going to finish your Ironman. But it's like you have to be able to really stick to the program so that at the times that matter, you can just say, you know what, I'm going to miss it this weekend.
So let me ask you this, and it's a real question. Spring break is coming. So you got kids. So this year's spring break, we're going to Disney.
We're going to plan it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, it's a big trip. It was my daughter last year. We didn't get to do her senior trip because of all this stuff, and so it's a big trip for we're Disney people. We didn't get to go, so it's an important thing. How do you? And that's right in the middle of training.
Yeah, but we're going to train really hard the week before, and you're going to have a week of like rest and recovery.
Yeah. Okay. So we
got to plan for it.
Yep.
We got to plan for it, because stuff like that, like not knowing, that's not a good thing, because then I haven't planned for it. But as long as we plan for it, we just plan around it. And that's part of the beauty of being able to work with a coach is I can move the schedule around so it still works, and it's really not going to be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was going, when that question that came through about, do you need a coach? I think that's one of those deals that, you know, where if you've got something coming and it's a Saturday and you're just like, look, but I think I'll be intentional. You make that decision of, it is much more important for me to be at my son's camp out on this Saturday than it is for me to do any training. So, hey, coach, Saturday, I'm out.
But we adapt and adjust.
Yes, yes. But you got to be proactive about it.
Yep, I got one here. So a lot of the triathlon training solo, a lot. But when you train with a group or somebody else, training with people faster than you are better athletes. How do we adapt and adjust to training with somebody faster than us? And what would you say to somebody that's going to train with somebody faster than them?
So if you're trying to train with somebody faster than you, a couple things. You know, one is the person who is faster, who you want to train with, are they on board with you training with them?
If they're willing to.
Are they willing to train with you? And that's a conversation you have before you plan the training session, because you have to ask them, because they might be sacrificing their training to help you. And a lot of people will do that, and that's fine.
Right.
But if you haven't previously discussed it with them and they think that you're going to be riding at their speed, it's not fair to either one of you, and it's not going to be fun for either of you either. And so stuff like that, like, you really need to discuss ahead of time, just have a really candid conversation and put it out there, you know, hey, I ride this speed and there's just no way, you know, maybe we could do intervals together. Like if you're going to do speed work, that's fine. Not a big deal. Maybe you can sit on their wheel, you know, depending on how much faster people are too. I ride with people who are faster than I am. I draft, you know, I just sit on their wheel and I draft. And nobody's expecting me to take a pull because I'm the slow person. And that's okay. I mean, as long as everybody knows what's going on. But if you go with a group and you know the group is significantly faster than you are, and you might not even be able to hang on somebody's wheel, then that's not fair to the group.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times what we've done too is do a loop, like a 20 or 30 mile loop or whatever, loop back to where you start and then the ones can, if they don't want to go any further, they're welcome to
Right.
finish, and then the other ones can go and do a faster loop or whatever they want
You
to do.
can make it work.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we've done. It's like 3 loops. Of
And I think peppering
33
that stuff
miles.
into your training could be good. I mean, because then you can gauge, how are you getting, you ride with that group that's a 20 mile per hour group, and you're an 18 mile per hour rider, and you're trying to get faster. You ride with them draft, and then you see, you can kind of gauge yourself. But some, like I think the person that asked that question is a really good runner, and if it's the one I'm remembering, nothing good would come from me running with him.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing.
Running's a whole nother story.
Yeah, running.
I mean,
running's
nothing would good
hard.
for me running with him. But I think cycling, and I think the big thing with swimming. You correct me if I'm wrong. I think having people. I think just the accountability of, hey, how many group cycling runs? A group cycling. I mean, there's meetups all the time.
Oh yeah, every day.
There's meetups to run all the time.
Swimming, not so much.
Swimming, not so much. And I think having something, and I think even for me, maybe spawning out of this, to get some things on the calendar where we're going to have group swims. This is the day. This is the time.
Show up at the Y.
Show up at the Y. Doesn't matter if you're an all-star swimmer or not. And, even we could, do some things where we, pay a little fee. We get coach to come in, do some little figuring out what's working, what's not working. But
I started to say I hadn't swim with anybody as a meetup, but I have a couple.
Yeah. I actually swam with. I didn't know I was swimming with him, but the first time I met him, Matthew, and we talked about we were swimming lane by lane at the Y over in Simpsonville. But okay, let's move on to half Ironman real quick. So, what you said 6 months out, you're starting to prepare for half Ironman. When is all this stuff starting to happen for the half Ironman, and what is really different? What kind of time frames are they on? And let's use the person that can run a half. They can run a half marathon. I'd say most of the people. How you chime in on this? I think most of the people that are doing it in our area, in our group, they can run a half marathon. They probably, I'd say they'd be in the beginner cycling category. Swimming, they're fish out of water. Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Yep, for most of those that we know.
They probably need to start, 6 months out too, going through the same stuff that we were talking about, except just knowing that their time on the weekends isn't going to be quite as extreme.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, if you want to have a great half Ironman, I mean, ideally you're getting your long ride up to about 80 miles, which is what I typically recommend, which really isn't that much different than Ironman training. I mean, it's still a long day in the saddle. And then with the running, 15 miles is your long run, maybe 16, depending on what kind of runner you are. And getting in the pool, just like we were saying with Ironman. Sure, you don't have to swim as far, but you still need to do the technique work and still get comfortable in the pool and kind of get into a routine.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 months. Any difference in gears and all the gear that you need for that? I mean, is it just?
I would say no.
No,
there's not a lot of difference in gear. You still want to look at what course you're doing, what the gearing on your bike is going to be. You're still preparing almost in every way, just like you would for an Ironman, except you're just not going to have the distances on the weekend.
Yeah.
It's those long distances on the weekend that really separate the Ironman training from half Ironman training, marathon from half marathon training. It's that distance on the weekend that's the big that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions on there about the?
A lot of them we covered.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as we put a bow on this one, for those that are thinking, mentally speaking, what are the questions they need to be asking themselves as they determine whether they want to do a half, do a full, and not just be, oh, that's a great idea. What, mentally speaking, what questions they need to be asking themselves?
I think realistically, it's the time commitment, and then also the financial commitment, because financially, like when you go to these races, you need to, usually you're staying 2 to 3 days at least. For Ironman, I would say it's probably more like a 4 or 5 day stay. So you kind of need to plan ahead for that. Also vacation wise. For me, a lot of times I like to take like a vacation day in the middle of the week to get a long run done, or a long ride run combo, so that way on the weekend I've freed up a weekend day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can be creative in how you work through it, but you definitely have to plan ahead for either distance, and definitely communicate with your spouse. I think that's probably something good to do early on.
Yeah. I think so. How you?
Yeah, lucky for me, my spouse, she's already done these.
Yeah.
So
Well,
knows,
you guys will
she
be
knows
able to,
what I'm into.
because you're signed up for Augusta,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they're doing Wilmington, which is, what is that, about a month difference?
It's
Just a few weeks
into
difference.
September. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a month.
So you guys will be right in.
And I probably would have deferred to Wilmington if I'd known all these folks were. But Wilmington's on a Saturday, and we may have a football game on Friday night. So I don't think that might have not worked out too good.
Yeah. So you'll be watching the Burns Rebels.
It might be the Dorman Burns game.
Oh
that
yeah,
night.
yeah. Definitely.
That's about the time of October we usually play.
All right, Coach. Well, we appreciate you coming in. We're going to follow this journey, and then after the 4-part series in June, you know what we're going to have?
The race recap.
We're going to have the race recap of Ironman Tulsa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so that'll be that's I'm looking forward to that one.
Yep, and we got one coming up with Ironman Florida recap.
Yes, for
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
for those of you that listen,
Yeah,
the only Ironman that took place, and so I'm interested to see not only their experience but the new way Ironman was run.
Yes, we'll quiz them on that too.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing about that. So that'll be coming up. So in a couple of months, we're going to be coming back to you, and we will be, by that time, we will be into some pretty serious training, 4 months to 2 months, and so we will come back to you with You Want to Be an Ironman Part 2. And as always, Coach Katie, how can they get in touch with you, and what are you? I know you got a lot of new athletes coming on, so what's your status right now?
My status is I'm pretty full,
Yeah.
but depending on the person, depending on what they're trying to do, we can make room.
Yep.
But it just really depends on just being a good fit for what I'm doing right now and for what our team's doing. We've got a lot of stuff going on for this year, just because everybody's excited to train again.
Yeah, yeah, fired up.
I'm at MaloneCoaching.com. Yep. They can contact me.
MaloneCoaching.com. She's my coach, and she really helped me. And I'm one of those people that's always. I struggle with not thinking that I always have the right answer and I know what's best for me. But a lot of times, Hal, and you may have seen this, we don't know what's best for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We need somebody else looking at what we're doing to figure out what's best for us and to help us on this journey. So you're gonna get to experience my journey. Hal's got to know you're doing Mount Mitchell again coming up in May.
Mitchell.
Yeah, big ride. Hopefully we'll be able to do some training rides.
Yes,
together,
we are
that'll
going
be
to put some.
that'll
together.
be something that's good. And then I don't know if it's smart or not, but I was originally signed up for Ironman Lake Placid. I'm still signed up for it at the end of July, and I was scared it was going to get canceled. But now the vaccines are playing, so
Perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like I'll have a couple of weeks to recover, and then I don't know how that'll work, but
I do. That's all that matters.
Okay, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. So. Anyway, big year, man. Big year, 2020. The next podcast you're going to hear, some of you probably tuned into this one because you're really excited about racing. I would encourage you to listen to the next one, which is putting the silver lining on 2020, because there's a lot of positive things we can take out of 2020. And I know we didn't get to race. I know a lot of things I didn't. Hey, that my daughter's senior year, a big roadblock got put in. But listen, put a positive spin on it. Think positive, and like we always say, if you'll do the hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself.